brothers and sisters of sobriety. This is Vinny. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
I'm Sam, alcoholic and addict.
And this is Tenacious Recovery. You got to be tenacious about your recovery if you want to stay sober.
So we're live from underneath the think tank, a little bit different today, with my good friend, Mark Werner from South Philadelphia. Mark, how's it going?
Going well, Sam. How
So
we doing today?
Doing good, buddy. I've known Mark, God, probably like 6-7 years now. We work together, but I've always known him to be just a beacon of recovery. Aside from our profession, aside from like kind of what we do, Mark has always been somebody I've admired wholeheartedly because he remains close to a power greater than himself. Just by the way that he carries himself with like the utmost respect and humility, he's always somebody I've looked up to in that regard, and we've both kind of become family men around the same time. I would say our kids are like relatively the same age, and I don't always get to talk to him a lot, but I've watched him over the years, and I've always, when I see Mark Werner, the first thing I always think of is like, that's a guy who I would take advice from. That is a guy that I would call if I was jammed up, even like around the corner of coming up on 10 years of continuous sobriety, you know? Like Mark is a guy I know that if there's something wrong in my life, I can call and I can trust his advice and what he has to say wholeheartedly because I know he really does this thing.
Cool.
So with that, I will say, Mark, tell us your story, man. Tell us where it started, you know, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now.
Sounds good. Mark Werner, recovering alcoholic and addict.
Hey, Mark.
Grew up in South Philadelphia. My parents were very young when they had kids. So I have an older brother that they had when my mom was 18. So both parents had to work multiple jobs growing up, which they did everything they could to make sure they could provide for us. We grew up in the city, so they wanted to make sure we went into Catholic school. So they worked their butts off to be able to make sure that we were in a good school and taken care of. And what that did was open up an opportunity for me when I got a little bit older, and I took advantage of them not being home because they were working multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So it went from like real cool childhood where like I spent, my mom worked at Toys R Us and Sally's Beauty Supply, so I learned how to front and face at like a really young age at Sally's. But then we would go over to like Toys R Us and I'd be like, my playground was Toys R Us. So
That's
like
so
we're riding
awesome.
bikes around, we're in the back playing with all the new wrestlers.
That's
Yeah.
great.
It was a second to none childhood without realizing like they're busting their butts to like really make sure that like we didn't see the struggles that they had.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then it turned into when I got a little bit older, I broke out and took advantage of them not being home and started to go the wrong route. Hanging out with the kids who weren't maybe doing the right thing in the neighborhood. Just got roped into doing stupid kid stuff. I mean, it was something that I don't feel like was too far from anybody else growing up in the city what they were doing. But I just got away with a little bit more because they weren't home. So when my parents weren't around, I would go drink with the friends on the corner. It started off as like a weekend thing. By high school, it was a daily. I was drinking daily by high school.
Wow.
I was the one who like all the kids in high school would go to for the alcohol. I looked a little bit older, so I was getting served at the beer distributors in South Philly.
You were going to the poppy stores, walking right in, getting a 40 and walking right out. Yeah.
No questions asked. Funny story, actually. Me and my dad would go New Year's Day or New Year's Eve and get all the beer for the house. And we go to the beer distributor that's on Front and Snyder. And when we walked in, the guy started to get my cases ready. As
Oh,
me
my
getting
God.
For my friends.
No.
And at like 15 years old, my dad found out like that this guy at the beer distributor knows who his son is.
And sells
and
him
like
alcohol,
sells him
yeah.
alcohol on a daily basis.
Did he have a problem with it?
You could see he was like not happy with it, but I mean, it's kind of like the norm, and it was New Year, so everybody was drinking anyway, so it was kind of like swept under the rug at the time. I kept my like use to be like a minimal issue for my family for the most part. Any consequences I really faced from it, I dealt with on my own and tried to like kind of cover up to where they didn't have to deal with it again. They were both working their asses off, so it wasn't like they were really around to see the trouble and chaos I was causing. So the damage and like the consequences took a lot longer to catch up to me because I was the one dealing with them. And I mean, it wasn't like really anything that was too bad at the time.
That's like something I definitely think about leniency, right? If your parents aren't around, or in my case, in some regard, like they don't really, it doesn't bother. They're not very overbearing, right? So what happens there is you can get away with a lot more, but it also puts like a little bit more hair on your chest because you have to deal with your own consequences as they arise, you know?
Yep. Yeah, so that was like the thing for me is that like the consequences were all on me.
Yeah.
And even though they might not have been the worst of consequences, especially I mean in the city, to get arrested you have to like slap a cop's mom in front of them.
Yep. I hear you.
So it wasn't necessarily ending up in handcuffs or anything like that, but it was I was catching ass whoopings on a regular basis for doing something stupid. And then once the drugs entered the picture was really when the consequences got worse because now all of a sudden my habits got worse. They got more expensive.
That's when the cops stopped doing you favors too.
Yeah. And then they stopped looking the other way a little bit. So, they still didn't get in too much trouble law-wise. Maybe some minor things down the shore. When I would spend summers in Wildwood with my grandparents, and
It's always down the shore.
It's always at the
I
shore.
think I still have like pending underages down the shore that I just haven't addressed. Yeah.
Yeah, there were the charges that they hit you with down there are crazy too. I got terroristic threats and like
Wow.
stuff, and I'm like, how do you?
It's
was
small
like
town.
they thought I planned 9/11 or something like that.
Yeah. Guy lit off a cherry bomb on the beach and now he's a terrorist.
Right. It's like small town rent-a-cops. And I say that with all due respect because Wildwood has a staff that they use 9 months out of the year. Then they bring extra people in 3 months out of the year, but they have no experience as being in law enforcement. So they're the kind of guys that put those terroristic threats on you when you lit a firecracker or whatever.
Oh,
you know?
that's definitely
They're all
held.
for doing the paperwork.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're all about it.
They're definitely held to the standard for how many tickets and charges they can write too.
Without a
So
doubt.
if
I
they
think so,
can,
yeah.
They'll probably make some stuff up just to slap it on your back. Yeah.
I still wouldn't want to be one, but have a ton of respect for them.
Yeah.
You know.
So I get through the early stages of addiction, and I ended up I graduated from a VOTEC school and did absolutely nothing with the HVAC and electrical certifications that I got from there. So it was starting to look like I was like the loser in my parents' basement at like 23 years old, 22 years old, I guess
okay.
I was. So I got a job working for TSA down the airport.
Really?
It was
How about that?
You were a TSA guy?
I was at TSA, yeah.
How about that?
A couple of airport boys together
Right?
right now, dude. He's an
Okay.
airport guy.
Oh, really?
He's
I worked down there for 25 years
Okay.
or whatever. Yeah, I worked for the biggest airline down there in Philly for a long time. It was U.S. Airways. It was U.S. Air, then U.S. Airways, and now they're American, but I never worked for American.
Yeah.
But that's who it is.
Yeah, so I went through that. I was messed up most of the time I was working down there. Still probably one of the best employees, like as far as
I'm
like
sure.
testing goes.
I'm sure, yeah.
I crushed it. But would go on my breaks to like go get high at the parking garage right next door and come back to work and stuff. And it was
at the short-term parking garage?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah. And I made that work for probably like 3 years because it paid good. So the cost of my addiction was getting covered. But
Right.
At what point does that stop? Because the addiction grows. I mean, I always say to people, like, they think of it like, how much drugs could you possibly do? If you parked a Brinks truck outside of my house every day and dropped off a boatload of money,
You would do
not
that
have been
much.
enough. I would have done whatever you gave me. I had to figure out how to do it and do enough of it to where I don't die, but I get as messed up as possible off of that amount until the next day comes and you reload me.
Absolutely.
You know what's funny? I always tell people, I always say at the end of my addiction, I was either the greediest or the stingiest human being you would ever come across. And I could make any amount of money last like 36 hours, whether it was $11 or $1,100. I was either burning it in 36 hours or stretching it 36 hours. And there was no in between.
So that's where it's like it starts to catch up to you because then all of a sudden your tolerance builds. So now I can't have less than what I'm making
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
So losing the job becomes a fear. But my ability to actually go to work and show up and do my job was starting to get like scarce. So at the end of it, I actually dropped down to part-time.
Did they
pay
put you
cut.
down to part-time?
No,
or
I requested it.
how
because,
come?
I wasn't making my shift on a regular basis, and I was worried it was going to start to become
I
an issue. And
gotcha.
I figured I could figure out how to make money outside of this place
Right.
easier than figure out how I can make myself last 8 hours standing in this place. So at that point, I turned to the streets and I started to do different things to get money that wasn't exactly legal.
Upstanding.
Yeah, and then the consequences piled on, and at some point, I just woke up, and I don't remember. It must have been just like dope sick after dope sick day where I finally woke up and was like, I can't do this no more.
Yeah.
I got to get my shit together. Like, something's got to give. I had no clue about AA. I had no clue about recovery. But somehow you actually just had on the podcast Kim Package, Kimmy P. I grew up drinking in her basement, getting messed up there. And when I reached out to somebody else from the neighborhood to like see like where does everybody go, I know people disappear to Florida every now and then, but like,
Yeah.
what do people do to like get sober? And they were like, you got to call Kimmy. And I was like, wait,
Kimmy from the block.
You mean Kimmy, whose house I've been getting messed up in for like 15 years of my life now? I'm like going to turn to for help. I had no clue that this woman was the saint she is, and how she didn't allow alcohol in her house, and that's why we snuck it in there.
Yeah.
So I reach out to Kimmy, and she says, go to detox. Puts me in the right direction. And I told her I would look into the detox thing, but she said, why don't tonight I'll pick you up and we go to a meeting. So that was my first AA meeting, was the first day I reached out for help. And
Cool.
Took me over to the South Philly group. And I don't remember much about the meeting, but I remember Kimmy speaking up for me at some point throughout the meeting and saying, like, just basically like saying that there's a newcomer in the room and we got to watch the way we're talking and whatnot. And
I could totally see her doing that.
she's
Commanding the
best.
room.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine being at your first AA meeting next to Kim P and then just her just raising her hand, and you know she's raising her hand for you?
Right.
Like, I got a guy here. It's his first AA meeting ever. You're just like,
Watch your
imagine
language.
just sinking into your chair. Just so you're
Watch
already
what you say.
uncomfortable. Oh man.
So Kimmy P took me to my first AA meeting, and then I go to detox. And when I went into detox, I remember I sold everything I had at that point. I don't think I had anything to my name. I had no money in the bank account.
You're still living with your parents?
Still living with the parents.
How old were you at the time?
22, 23 maybe actually. 23 years old, going to my first detox center, and I thought this was it. Like, we're going to get ourselves detoxed. Once the drugs aren't in my system no more, I won't have that urge. I'm going to be okay. So I go into detox, and I remember sitting in there, and they brought in an AA meeting, and luckily, Kim took me to my first AA meeting outside of detox. So, like, this isn't my first AA experience, but it's still, like, one of my first experiences of what the 12 steps are. And I remember being dope sick. They forced us to go into the meeting, and the guy's like talking about how his higher power could be anything. It could be a door. And I'm thinking, I just want to kick your higher power right now. Like, I want to kick through this door and run. So we get through that phase. I toughed it out through detox. Check out the next day, and they were trying to get me to go to Florida while I was in there. The guy was like recommending me go there, and I wasn't feeling it. I felt like, all right, I feel fine. I'm better than everybody else in here. These people, everybody was in there. The guy sitting next to me was the biggest liar in the world, number one. But number two, he was talking about how he's been to 34 treatment centers. And I'm like, we're not alike. I have nothing in common with this guy other than the fact that, like, we've done some substances that are the same. So I check out of there. I think I'm completely different. I think I'm good. Within 3 hours, I left my mom and dad's house as soon as they went to sleep. I went, hit the block, met up with a dealer, robbed that drug dealer, go on a run that night, and the next morning I come walking back into my house, and my dad was like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "I got to go to treatment."
And just came same day.
Yeah, same day. He's like, "You just got out." So I get on the phone with the same place I just came from. They said, "You don't need detox, you would need to go to treatment." They sent me down to Florida. I get on a flight. I'm throwing up so bad from withdrawal that, like, I burst every blood vessel in my face, and, like, I look nuts.
Wow.
I'm going through to see all of my coworkers, mind you. Like, I work at TSA still. I'm on their insurance at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm walking through checkpoints with my coworkers who were like, this guy hasn't been here in a couple weeks. He looks like death.
That's so
All
wild.
the blood
That's
vessels
pretty
in his
crazy.
face are bursted. And they're like, where are you going? I'm like, vacation.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I get to the checkpoint, or I get to the gate, and they were trying to not let me on the flight because I look like absolute shit.
Oh my God.
I called the treatment center I was going to. I was like, they're not going to let me on the flight. I don't know what else to do. I guess I'm going to have to stay up here. And the guy was like, put him on the phone. It was this British guy from the treatment center. Ended up being a really good guy. I got to know him when I got down there. But he's like, that's what bloody doggy bags are for. Let him on the flight. And they're like, oh, sir, like, we can't let him on the flight looking like this and feeling like this. Like, it's... And he just lost it on them. They let me on the flight.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
I sit into my seat, and this lady comes walking down the aisle. And she goes, you got the lucky straw. You get to sit next to me. And I just looked up and I was like, you got to sit next to me.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
I spent that entire flight between that seat and the bathroom throwing up. Checked into my first treatment center down in Florida. Snuck some drugs in there.
Did you? On the plane too? Oh, because you're a TSA guy. And you know how to do it.
Yes.
So I was never an IV user. I snorted and ate everything. And I was throwing up so much from withdrawal that I was afraid I was going to waste what I had. So I was like, I got to wait at least until the shit settles down. So I waited, and then next thing I know, I'm sitting in treatment down in Florida with this pocket full of pills in me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I spent my first week in treatment getting messed up. Clearly, obviously, I used against my own will probably for a good year at this point. So what's another couple days in treatment?
Definitely.
Get through that portion. I check out of there, and again, I thought everything was going to be fine. Like, now, detox wasn't the answer, but treatment has to be the answer.
How long were you in treatment for?
75 days.
And how many days were you using?
Only the first week. It lasted maybe.
Did they catch
I think it
you?
might have lasted. Nah,
They never caught you?
never caught me.
Okay.
No. I think it might. What I had on me might have lasted me like 3 or 4 days. Maybe.
Okay.
So for the first week, I was pretty messed up.
So you detoxed yourself.
And then I detoxed myself again. I was like, everybody in there was like feeling bad for me, thinking like I had the worst detox ever.
Yeah,
I was like,
I'm sure.
I just reset it.
Right. Every day you were going through it again.
So get out of there. I go, it was like towards the end of my stay, I remember like I was petrified to go back to Philly. So I was like, I got to stay down here. So I like found this halfway house in West Palm Beach, and they're like, this place will take you. So I go to this place. I get a job right away digging ditches in South Florida.
Nice.
And I know they can't see me, but my beach body would not permit that to happen for too long.
Nice.
So I lasted maybe I might have lasted a day at this place. But I show up wearing shorts, a t-shirt, no hat, and these Mexican guys were like, "Gringo, you messed up."
Oh my God.
Buddy, you're completely gonna fry your brain, and you're not gonna make it through the day.
No water. Yeah.
I literally just remember sitting under their water cooler, like, these guys drink this shit, and I'm like pouring it over my head because I'm gonna die. So I'm stealing their water to pour over my head while they told me I messed up already. I ended up I think I might have lasted a couple days at this place. But it's what got me kicked out because I didn't have the rent money after not getting paid after the first week to be able to stay at the sober living home, and the guy kicks me out. I probably wasn't even looking for another job at the time. It's not like a victim thing. I don't like to pin that on other people. He had his reasons. He has to make money for his family, whatever. So I get kicked out of there, and my pride and ego, because my family thinks I'm doing so well, wouldn't allow anybody me to call anybody for help. I was like, I got to figure this situation out again. Growing up.
How many days do you have at this point? You're like 3 months sober?
About.
Give or take?
Give or take. Probably a little over 2 because you got to figure the first couple weeks of treatment.
Yeah, you were still getting high.
Yeah, that's true.
But I would still say that throughout this whole time, I don't have a sober thought in my head throughout this entire time.
You're not engaging in 12 steps at all.
I wasn't engaging in the 12 steps. I wasn't like, I was more using the fellowship to have a place to go at that.
The treatment center basically took advantage of your insurance.
I
mean, you
without
didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah,
they should have basically.
I took advantage of my insurance. I would say because I should have been putting in what they would have allowed me to put in if I was.
But they should have recognized that you weren't participating and active in treatment and said, "Hey, bro, you're going to mess up the community here."
Yeah,
like there's a line there where they're keeping you and billing for your time there and saying, hey, and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at things.
Oh yeah.
Now this far down the road.
Two-sided
You know what I mean?
every sword. I played my part. They played their part, I'm sure. But the biggest thing for me is I try not to think of that as any part of sobriety to me because of how drastically different my thought process was then.
Right.
To when I actually wanted this and put in the work. Because since that moment when I actually wanted this and put in the work, everything has turned out completely different for me.
Right.
And that's what we'll get into now is like, so I get out of, I get out of that sober living home because they kicked me out because there's no rent money coming in. My pride and ego wouldn't allow me to call my parents and be like, hey, listen, like I need help. I need somewhere to go. So I wanted them to still think I'm doing well because at the time I didn't pick up yet. Like, and sobriety isn't what it is now to me. So then it was like just being off of drugs was good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it is in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think once we finally, once the smoke clears in our head, all we have left is our defects of character.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Well, if you look at coming out of treatment, you have some semblance of sobriety, but you're mainly dry. You're mainly just clean
Yeah.
because sobriety, as we know, is a state of mind,
Yes.
right?
That's exactly, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that in moments like that, and I think a lot of us have gone through that. I mean, I think a lot of us experience great fear of engaging in 12-step programming because there is such a surrender of all you have left, which is your ego. You know what I mean? So when you come into it and you're like, listen, I'm sober. I'm using quotation marks right now. I don't have a substance in my body, and I haven't had a substance in my body in somewhere in the realm of 65 to 75 days. But that's like how you know you're sick. It like almost cosigns your disease because you're in such a bad spot in that moment. You want to lie, you want to steal, you want to cheat. All these like initial gut reactions that you have to living life, kind of like they're just so apparent. You know what I mean?
All without drugs in my system.
All without drugs in your system. Well, that's like the shocker. You know what I mean? And it kind of like you either pick up or you're forced to do what I imagine you're going to say happens next.
Yeah. So I go to my sponsor at the time, who I'm actually really close with his brother and everybody now. So my sponsor at the time calls me and is like, listen, there's a homeless shelter down here that you can go to. It's not like the best of situations, but this is where I would recommend going to. So I check into this homeless shelter. Wow. And I remember going in there with like this prison mindset, like, stay away from me. I'm not here for a long time. Get away. Like, I don't want nothing to do with any of you people. I don't want to hear what the workers have to say. I don't want to hear what the people who are staying here have to say. And I just kept to myself and isolated. And the next morning they woke me up to go to this sober living, like homeless shelter. It was called Clean Time. It's in Lake Worth, Florida. And I don't even know if it still exists, but it was a crap hole. So I show up there and the owner looks like he's doing something he shouldn't be doing with one of the girls there. They throw my thing in this oven for bed bugs, and I just looked at them like, there's no way this place doesn't have bed bugs.
Yeah,
like,
they're heat treating your clothes.
Exactly.
yeah, there's no way you don't already have it at this point.
Yeah.
So they put me in this room, and I'm in there with these two Hispanic gentlemen. One guy who's telling me he's one of the Diaz brothers from that they talk about in Scarface.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The other guy is Cuban and speaks no English at all, and I don't speak Spanish to save my life. I could say a few things, but that would be about it.
Dude, I love the characters you meet along the
Right.
way.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like the things they tell you. Like, it's so funny. I have a guy be like, yeah, man, I killed 40 people. I'll
Yep.
be like, what? No, you didn't. You know
you
what I
decided
mean?
to open up about that with me right now?
Yeah, dude, you're from Doylestown. Like,
Right,
stop,
right.
man. No, you didn't. What are you, Cosmo Donardo? Like,
Right.
Come on, man. Like,
Burying 4 people in his farm.
stop, dude.
Right.
Like, come on.
And
It's
the
so
room we
funny.
lived in was like half the size of this room, and it was tight quarters with
yeah.
2 other grown men.
How many beds to one room?
3.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
So
They hadn't picked up on the bunk beds yet, clearly.
no, thank God at this point.
Yeah, it's tough for adults to be climbing in and out of bunk beds.
Yeah.
Oh,
It ain't prison, bro.
Try getting sober in South Philly. That's what they did.
I know.
Yeah, it's
Pack
tight.
them in like sardines.
Yeah. It builds character.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I'm sad they're not doing it anymore, to be honest with you. You should be within 4 cubic feet of another man's sweat. when
Oh,
you're trying
my
to get
God.
sober. Test your willingness.
I feel like
I
I
guess.
greatly appreciate what
I'm
I have
kidding.
now more because
Oh my God,
of these
yeah.
situations that we
Yeah,
put ourselves
absolutely.
in at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Yeah.
So like I look at my home where like most people would be like, it's a simple home and this and the other, and I look at it like it's a mansion. Like this place is beautiful and like the backyard is everything I could ever want. And like to everybody else, it's probably just like your average home. But for me, it's like you don't know where I've lived. To
Right.
say that this
It's like
is
a
an average
castle.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a castle to
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
So I go through that, and I end up leaving that place to work. I was working at like these like the phone rooms that are down in Florida.
Yeah, so many.
And
All our friends did that.
Yeah.
Yep. I met this lovely daytime stripper, and
Nice.
she was every bit of a daytime stripper.
My God.
Not the ones you'd put on a billboard. Let's put it that way. And I move in with her after like one day of talking,
Of course.
and here she's got a wicked habit. But in Florida, she was like the pill mill days, so she had like pills galore that were coming
Right.
in. She fed the need that I had, and
you picked up.
I picked up at that point.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'm using for about a week with her. I'm living in this little bungalow, and she left to go get another script with her mom. And I just saw a window of opportunity. I took what she had left in the little bungalow, and I called the treatment center. I said, I'm going to give you the name of a corner. It was like a CIA operative.
Oh, my God.
I was like, I'm going to give you the name of a corner, and this is where you're going to pick me up at. And that's what happened. I get picked up for my second stay in treatment, and I go back for another 75 days. And this time things were a lot different, because now I realize like I'm not so much different than the person I was sitting next to in detox, who said he had 34, that I was like,
Right.
me and him, we don't have anything in common other than the substances we've used.
Nah.
Now we're starting to get some things in
You
common.
had more in
yeah.
common than
like,
you think.
Like I'm like, now this stuff's like starting to like realize
Sure.
that, like the downward spiral has begun, and this stops when I want it to stop, and I don't want to continue down this path no more. So while I'm in treatment, I become like Captain Recovery. I'm president of the treatment center.
Yeah, of
Captain
course.
Recovery. I love it.
Yeah, they had this thing. The recovery boat was one of their like little activities that they did, and this girl who's on there is the captain, and I'm the co-captain of this recovery boat. And the coolest part about my story is the fact that that girl is actually up here now in treatment, like in the rooms and like working a program. And I just spoke for her like 2 weeks ago down in Atlantic City area. I can't remember the exact name of the town we were in.
Okay.
But I went and spoke for her. But like we saw each other at a Phillies game last year. She's sitting behind me, and she texts me like, the recovery boat's behind you, and I'm like,
What?
what?
You turn around, she's right there.
Her and another girl we were in treatment with, both sober, both have families, both doing well, have
That's
the world
great.
by the balls. Like everything's going
Wild,
well.
man.
Like
That's awesome.
to see like that compared to like how many people we've lost along the way, how many people like I've sat in treatment with who aren't here anymore.
Yep.
Or who are just out there and just can't get this thing together. So it's really cool to be able to like see other people's stories. Like you said, we've watched each other along this path for so long, and you know who's like really doing it and who's not doing it, and who's kind of faking the funk, or who's been in and out and whatnot. But to see like the ones who are like really genuinely doing this and like changing their lives for the better, helping other people, becoming a family man or becoming a family woman, raising kids, just all of these cool things that we get to do that like I didn't see a future ever for myself. I didn't see myself ever not being a kid, let alone having kids and raising kids. So I go through that treatment stay, and it was
Something clicked.
it was something different. I got into the rooms. I picked up a sponsor. I picked up the home group. I got into the steps, going to traveling for meetings and all these cool things. And around 2 years, I became my own God again.
Yeah, of course.
And I stopped working the steps. I didn't just stop working the steps. I worked them backwards.
Oh my
I was
God.
Like, yeah, we're not going to help other people. We're just going to like stop answering. So I remember like sitting in my boxers, playing Madden while a sponsee called me, and like
Just looking at it.
looking at the phone. I answered it, and he was like, "Can we get together to do step work?" And blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Not today. Today I'm really busy." And I'm like in my boxers,
Right.
Madden. Like there is nothing that should have come above recovery, let alone like me to play Madden in my boxers.
You're basically your sponsee trying to get you in gear.
Yeah,
Right.
dude.
Yeah, and that's a weird feeling. Like looking back on it, like I really hope that I never get to that point again. And like the only way I know to not get to that point again is to continue to do what we do. So I worked the steps backwards, and I end up going out. With
Oh, you
2
went out
years
with 2
sober.
years. Okay.
I picked up down in Florida, and I went on a 10-day run where I picked up a new substance. At that point, I found crack cocaine, and
Yeah.
it took
Wow.
That one will
10
get
days
you.
of wanting to kill myself.
Yeah, that one will get you good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got me good. Got me for a little while too, brother.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's the type of thing where you relapse after 2 years. Now your mental stability is like way off because you just blew 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's affecting you. So what are you doing? You're probably smoking more than, more and more and more.
Yeah, and it was 10 days of wanting to try to find a way to kill myself.
Absolutely.
I didn't want to live at all. I was petrified to ask for help. I was in a small town in Florida where everybody's like either there because they retired or they're there for recovery. Some people probably both. But I remember having to go to like Walmart and stuff in the middle of the night to like avoid people because I didn't want to be seen by anybody in the room.
In the
because
community.
I had 2 years of like being Captain Recovery down there. Everybody knew who I was. I owned a sober living home down there.
Wow.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So it was like everybody who knew me because of recovery. And if I got seen, I would have felt like the guilt and shame would have killed me. So I avoided it at all costs. I only went out in the middle of the night. And for 10 days, I wanted to die. So I remember at the end of the 10 days, I wrote out this long text message to my sponsor. And I still to this day don't think I ever pressed the send button. I think the heat radiated off my finger long enough, just hovering above it, that it sent. And that instant feeling of all the weight of the world off my shoulders.
It feels so good.
You admitted that you fucked up.
Just
surrendered again.
Thinking about that feeling 11 plus years later feels like it just happened just now. Like I feel that the emotion, the weight that gets off your shoulders, the constant racing thoughts of like how I can find my way out of this. Like I found my way out of it. It's a simple thing. Just reach out for help.
It's not easy, but it's very simple.
It's the most simple thing I've done, but it's the hardest thing I ever had to do at the same time. So I reached out for help. Sponsor said he was going to come get me. I was using a buddy of mine who was on a run also up in Jersey at the time, and I had no clue he was on a run. He had no clue I was on a run. I had his Jeep. Andrew Simpson.
No way. Yeah, that's funny.
So it's a buddy of mine. He's on a run up here. I was on a run down there. Both of us, thank God, got our shit together, and both are really family men and all that other stuff now. But I'm down there with his Jeep riding around. I went back to my sponsor's house, checked myself into treatment. I did my 75 days again. I still, as much as I knew what the answer was, it was so much more harder this time around than the last time because not knowing it and finding it was easy. Knowing it and trying to get back to it
is so hard.
It was death by 1,000 paper cuts every day, I felt like.
But that's what you need. I mean, that's what I have a very similar story because I also picked up at 2 years. I picked up at 2 years, and it took me 4 months to get back. And I had a baby at the time. And my now wife at the time, girlfriend, had no idea what I looked like, what crack cocaine smoke Sam looked like. You know what I mean? Like, she was not ready for it. And in that 4 months, like, I got us evicted, and I never in my life wanted to be sober as bad as I did in those 4 months. I wanted it so bad. Like, the depths and grips of this disease were never as apparent to me as they were in that time. Because I, like, really wanted it. You know what I mean? And I just couldn't stop. Yeah. And I think when you show up, I'll never, like, getting sober, like, God willing, as long as I've been sober now, 8 years and some change, was so hard. Yeah. It was so hard. It's like they say, head full of AA, belly full of beer, right? Yeah. Like, it's so difficult because your defects, like we were talking about, are just so in your face all the time with everything you do, with every thought you have. Like, they are glaringly on a TV screen for you and honestly everyone in your life to see.
Yeah, they're magnified without a doubt.
It's a part of it, man. It's a part of it. Like, to me, it being so hard the second time around and wanting it so bad, and like, I didn't walk up the steps my second time around. Wasn't my second time either. My second time, like, really doing it, I climbed that motherfucker, dude. Yeah. I climbed that thing like a goddamn ladder, and it brings you so much closer to God. You know what I mean? It really kind of solidifies a relationship and a belief in a power greater than yourself. Like, that struggle, dude. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I get out of treatment, or during that treatment stay, I actually remember, like, I still had, like, the suicidal thoughts while I was in treatment. Because,
I'm sure.
I'm, like, thinking about the sober living home that I can't own anymore because nobody's going to send anybody to a sober living home that the person who owns it is fresh out of treatment at that point. So I'm like, I'm losing this, which my brother went in partners with me at the time. So it was like a family dynamic, my little brother. And was a family dynamic. I was like kind of worried about that. Like maybe this is what's going to change his mind of like not wanting to like be there for me anymore. Had nothing to do with it didn't affect us at all. I mean, that kid, he's the man. So I sat in the pool, I remember, and it starts thunder and lightning one day. And I just looked up and they were like clearing everybody out of the pool. And I was just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. Like, God, let's
get
do
that
this
lightning,
now.
right.
If I die of an overdose, everybody will be mad at me. If I die from suicide, everybody will be mad at me. If I died because lightning hit me, that's God's will at this point. Like, let's go.
You stayed in as long as you could, didn't you?
Until they were like, we're going to call the cops if you don't get out of here. And I'm like, all right, that becomes a suicide. Now the cops come or whatever.
Right. Oh, my God.
I'll get myself out, I guess. So I get out of there and I go talk to the counselor. And they helped me get my head back on straight. And I remember leaving there with stripped of everything. Stripped of all the material things I've gained, stripped of all the relationships I've gained. I went back into the sober living home that I owned as a client.
Yeah, of course.
And I had people in that home who I scholarshiped in there, kind of like looking down on me and talking shit to me.
Wow.
And
that ain't sobriety either.
That's probably the best
You know what I
thing for
mean?
your ego at
But
the
it was
time.
it was exactly what I needed, like looking back on it, because like I remember sitting here, like one kid said to me, and this is again somebody I scholarshiped and like looked out for at the time. And he looked at me, he was like, so you sold it and like you're going to go back up, because I had plans to like go back up to Philly after my older brother was getting married in September. And I was like, I'm going to just go home at this point.
Yeah.
There's nothing left down here. If I could do this anywhere, I could do it up there. So he said to me, he's like, you got a pocket full of money from selling this place and now you're going to go back up north. Nice. And I knew what he meant by it. And I just looked at him like, I got to prove this motherfucker wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to win this. I'm going to win this.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. We got this. So I made sure, like, when I went back up north, like, that was, like, the first thought on my head was, like, everybody thinks I'm going to fail. Nobody thinks I'm going to be able to do this. I know I could do this. And as much as I don't want to do this right now, like, as much as I want to just, like, lay here and feel bad about myself and feel like I threw it all away, I'm going to figure out how I get it back. And that's what I've been doing since that day was I came up here. I was in shorts and the T-shirt. I went to the South Philly group again, my first meeting back up here. I would go to the South Philly group in shorts and the T-shirt. It was cold as shit to me because I was down in Florida for that long.
Right.
But it's like October or something.
Yeah, it was.
So it wasn't even that cold.
It was 55 degrees. Yeah.
Right.
But to me, I was freezing at that time. So I started to build the network up here that I had down there the first time around. I got the sponsor. I got the home group. I got the friends who were around me. I got a bunch of young guys who were willing to like travel.
Kimmy
for
from the
meetings.
block you had.
Yeah.
Kimmy was in my corner again.
That's great.
So like I had a lot of good people around me, and that's what I did. I dove deep into this program when I got up here.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit. My son was June 21st, 2013 is my sobriety date.
Okay.
June 20th, 2018 is my son's birthday.
Nice.
Day before my 5-year anniversary.
How about that? Nice gift.
It was awesome. Stubborn little guy couldn't wait couple more hours to get here on my anniversary.
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't like to share either. I get it.
I hear you. I hear you. He wants his own day, man.
Imagine more. How dare he steal your thunder?
Really?
You know what I mean?
He's like, I'm going to get here before your anniversary. So he's born, and a month before he's born, the job I had the entire first 5 years of my recovery, they got bought. The top gets chopped off of there, and I was the last of the Mohicans. I'm like the last to go. I seen the writing on the wall. I kind of knew it was coming. Didn't prepare for it at all. And I find myself like calling my wife to tell her, if you're shopping, put it down. I don't know where the next paycheck's coming from. I know this has to be scary as shit for you because you're 9 months pregnant at this point, but I promise you I will figure this out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna let this derail me. Don't let it derail you. And I said that with like the confidence, but like inside I'm like full of fear.
Of course.
I'm like praying to God every step of the way. I'm like barely hanging on to any bit of faith I have that things are going to work out, but like I can't let nobody around me know that like things can fall apart.
Well, you have to be strong for more than just yourself at this point.
Yeah.
You have
First
to like
time in my
absorb all their fear.
First time in your life. That's right.
Yeah. Like I'm responsible for that. And she was a high risk pregnancy, like preeclampsia, like all these things that like you hear like the risk factors of. And I'm like, I almost didn't want to call her to tell her. I almost wanted to figure it out first. But like that's not who we are. We let other people in. We let other people know what we're going through, and we let them know that like we'll figure this out together. And like that's what I did. I stepped up and I called her. So I leave the building. They had me drive all the way to Cherry Hill, even though we had a Willow Grove office where I moved to Warminster to be next to that office.
Yes.
So I got driven. I drove all the way to Cherry Hill to get fired. I leave that office and I got in the car and after I called my wife, I made one call and I got a job immediately. They were like, "We don't know what we're hiring you for, but we'll bring you in here."
How about that?
Yeah.
So
Very nice.
that was like not only the good people I've had in my life around me showing up for me, but like God letting me know, like, you have been prepared for this. Even though you might not have been preparing for it, I've been preparing for this and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Right away.
It made me like take that ride home a lot different, knowing that like
It was like a 15-minute ordeal.
yeah,
sounds
like in 15 minutes, yeah, exactly.
You
15 minutes, I went from like losing the job with a 9-month pregnant wife to finding a new job and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, buddy, the sun had moved like 10 inches in the sky.
Not even
If that, right?
You know what I mean? In the time that you thought your life was over till you were fine.
What sucks is like a lot of the people who did get let go from that place didn't make it through the let go. They relapsed off of it. Whether they wanted this bad enough or not, there's a billion different factors. But like but for the grace of God, there go I. I seen it happen numerous times before me where everybody went the wrong route afterwards, and I don't have that luxury because I have a newborn son on the way. I have a wife who depends on me. We have a home we just bought. We bought our first home 9 months prior. Like we moved in and she got pregnant type stuff. So it was a good move-in day.
Yeah.
But,
Real celebration.
but I don't have what they all had, which was the ability to just run from it. And I knew I had to run to the right thing. And that was my program. That was God. That was a new job and figuring things out. And I did everything this program taught me to do. And it worked out. Might not have been where I stayed. I've bounced around a little bit since then, but every place I've gone to has had its purpose. And I don't know. There's just something about this past 6 years of my life where I've done a lot of figuring out on who I am. But the craziest part is so after my son was born at 5 years sober, I slowed down on my meetings. Life started to show up.
Yeah.
New jobs are
It
happening,
happens.
and like I was comfortable in my old job to where like I knew like I had a routine. It was like, all right, I'd break for lunch and I'd go to a meeting after work. Every once in a while I'd hit a meeting on my way home or something like that, or I had my certain meetings I would hit throughout my day. And that all changes once now my routine changes. So like I'm working in different areas and I'm traveling here and there, and it's harder. It became more of a chore to get to a meeting.
It's way more of a chore. You also have to look your wife in the eyes and be like, hey, not sure if you're aware of this or not, but I'm going to leave you at home with a newborn baby so I can go talk about myself and my friends for about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
what? It brings it into full practice, dude.
Yeah.
It brings really where you're at into full practice. I mean, I say it all the time, not to like branch off from like where you're at in your story, but like when I hear about your 2 years, how you were Captain Recovery and then playing Xbox in your boxers, like, dude, I'm right now, I have a kid every 3 years. I have 3 kids. They're 3, you know what I mean? I have 3 kids. Vinny has 3 kids, right? When I have a kid, I grow very far away from Alcoholics Anonymous because it becomes my priority. I'm chasing a pillow at 7:30 p.m., dude. You know what I am? You know what happens within like 3 to 6 months? I get super fucking grouchy, dude.
Yeah.
I get super grouchy. I get super self-centered,
All
maybe
this
even a
is-
little bit dishonest. And God willing, I never picked up. But and then what happens is who notices first? My wife. Who notices second?
course.
My kids. Then my friends. Right.
Yep.
I grow away from this thing because I think my duty is to my family. But as it turns out, just like they tell me, I'm of no service to anybody if I can't get this thing together.
Yeah, you have to
So-
take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
But again, like you have to, buddy, I go to 6 a.m. meetings on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't want to always do that shit. I want to go to a Tuesday
You
night
go to
meeting.
6 AA meetings?
6 a.m.
Oh, 6 a.m. I was going to say, wow, that's a lot.
I go to, if I can.
Yeah, you're just
and
avoiding
listen,
the family
Right,
if you're doing
exactly.
6 a.m. meetings in a day.
No. I go
That's
to
right.
6 a.m. meetings. 6
That's
in the
rough,
morning.
man.
I don't always make it. I don't, on a Saturday morning, nonetheless,
Yeah.
because that's what my life allows for today. You know
Right.
what I
That's
mean?
cool.
And it's a blessing that that's even available.
Yep.
But like, you have 2 now, right?
Yeah.
He has 2 kids now. Like, he knows getting AA meetings that you want to go to, not always going to be a thing.
Well,
Because this is your purpose now.
Yep.
It's all about balance.
Of course.
You have to find that balance to where, like Sam said, 6 a.m. meeting.
Yeah.
His kids aren't up at 6 a.m., I hope, anyway.
Not now. They
you
were
know.
at one point, but like now they're not. No, I mean they I hope not. You know?
So you could go do your thing, come back in. They haven't even had breakfast yet.
They haven't even woken up. But here's the funny thing: is like I'll go to the 6 a.m. meeting, and then the guys I meet at the 6 a.m. meeting are like, "Hey, you want to get breakfast after?"
Of course.
You know what I say? Probably not.
Yeah.
I got a soccer game today.
Yep.
I got a kid's birthday party. I got this, and this. I want to get home and like catch a shower before we all eat breakfast together. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that's just like where my life's at right now. This is the life that God has provided for me. It's the greatest life I could have ever imagined for myself because there are 4 individuals I live in my house with that mean more to me than myself.
Yeah.
Which is rare for a self-centered son of a bitch like
Ain't
me.
that the
You know what I mean? Like, that's fucking rare for me. So right now, I have a couple meetings that I like to get to every week. Do I hit them every week? Absolutely not. I'm being honest with you. Do I check in with my sponsor as much as I possibly can? You goddamn right. Am I lucky to take a guy through the steps every once in a while? Sure. There will come a time where my youngest daughter is 12, and she's not going to give a shit whether or not I'm there Saturday morning for breakfast, And I'll be able to go to as many meetings as I need to, and I'll be able to give myself back to this thing. But I look at it as right now, God has given me the responsibility of being a huge part of my family. I look at a guy like Vinny, who's like an incredible, I look up to him as a father and a family man. Like his family, how many of your kids do you talk to every day? All of them, right?
How many of my kids? All
Yeah, all of them.
Well, my daughter is married and out, but we text.
Dude, I'll say it for you. He is an incredible family man. And I didn't always experience that in my family. A lot of that was on me, but like I want that. I want my kids to be close to me. So I'm going the task God has given me now is to create a healthy home.
Yeah. Amen.
That's the task right
Amen.
now. That's the task.
That lasts so long in the future. You know what I mean?
Of course, you got to lay the foundation.
The
right?
foundation
That's the
is
task
important
right now, brother.
Exactly. They ain't going to be moving to Colorado to get away from Sam and his. And
of course,
you know what I mean? Like,
but like I'm still regimented. I'm not any less of an alcoholic, and I think I still get in service. Like I read pages 86 to 88 every morning when I wake up, and I do my darndest to do a 10-step before I go to bed every night. And I check it. I'm blessed to say that all my friends are alcoholics. So when my phone rings with my friends during the day, it's AA's there.
Yeah.
It's relevant in my life.
Yep.
It's just not what it was when I was Captain AA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It looks a lot different.
It looks a lot different, man. And like a lot of people may look down upon that until they fucking start a family of their own. You know what I mean?
And that's what it was for me. Is like I looked down on it almost like this can't happen to me. Like I'm beyond reproach when it comes to slowing down on my meetings. Like I know what this does to me because of what I went through at 2 years sober, where I threw it away.
Correct.
And like I never want to get to that point where like I'm looking back on like how much time could I have now type thing, because I did that for the first like 2 years.
That does you no
now
good.
Now I sit here and I'm like, how long do I have? Oh yeah, that's it.
you have today. That's it.
But then it was like the most important thing to me, especially while I was Captain Recovery, because it's like these things matter. Like people care how much time you have. Now I'll walk into a room and I won't even tell people how much time I have. I'll just sit there and let you think I'm the newcomer.
It doesn't
neither do
matter.
I like judge my sobriety based on how close I am to God today, and that's it.
Yep.
That's like
Bingo.
literally it. That's
But
how
a
I
lot of
judge it.
people, especially newcomers, they get trapped in this counting.
Yeah.
And I tell people, try not to count. All of a sudden, you'll have 90 days.
Yeah.
But you have today.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you'll have 6 months or a year. But you have today. I spoke at a recovery center once, probably 20 years ago now.
Nice.
And I basically said, show of hands, who has the most sobriety in here? Who has the longest time? And they were pointing at me. I was like, I got up at like 10 in the morning. What are you talking
what
about?
time did you guys wake up?
And then they were like, you see that light bulb go off on top of their head, like, oh. Oh, that's what that one day at a time thing means. It's for today.
Yep.
You know, I don't care what you have in your past. If you relapse today, you're screwed.
Yep. So my meetings slowed down, and it was becoming the chore to get to AA meetings, and then my daughter's born. So my daughter was born in 2018. Or no, 2000. My son was born in 2018. She was born in 2022. So 4 years had gone by where my meetings had pretty much like become non-existent. I would pop in here and there just to like kind of like show face and like if it was convenient enough to hit a meeting almost that day.
You're not ripping commitments though.
No. I had not been in service in a long time.
Yeah, you weren't making coffee, right?
Yeah, no. So my daughter's born in 2022, and she's born. We get a call 5 days after she's born that the newborn testing shows there's irregularities in her thyroid.
Okay.
And right away, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I look into thyroid. Number one, Google's the scariest thing in the world.
Never Google something.
You can't do that.
I did it.
I've learned that.
By the way, I work with like doctors.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
connections to like some of the brightest
Exactly.
individuals in the world.
Yeah.
And I utilized none of them and went right to Google.
Never. You went right to Google. We always go right to Google.
So I go to Google, and it's the captain of the ship. The thyroid, it's so much for hormones and brain development and growth and blah, 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 all these things. And I'm like, what do we do? So the doctor is on the phone with my wife, tells her, we called in this medication. It's at the CVS. So I run right away. I leave there, and I'm like bawling my eyes out in the car because like I'm full of fear again. Mind you, this is now 4 years of like next to no meetings. AA is not the most predominant thing in my life. I still have a strong relationship with God. The only reason I did not pick up over the time where my meetings went from like non-existent or slowed down to non-existent is because of my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, firmly believe in the fact that He's saved me through all of this, because left to my own demise, the only solution I have is to pick up.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So I get that call, and I'm crying my eyes out on the way to the CVS, and I spent like probably an extra 15 minutes in the car crying to my mom because like I'm going through all this shit, and I'm a mama's boy, so like I still to this day, 36, I'll turn to my mom at the drop
buddy,
of a
you're
dime
from
if
South
something's
Philly.
going
That's
on.
how you guys all are.
Exactly.
Tough on the outside, mama's boy on the inside.
That's why you guys all get high for so long, because your mom co-signs everything
Absolutely.
you do.
So I call her, and I get off the phone with her, and I go into the CVS, and I'm wiping tears from my eyes. I probably look like an absolute lunatic. And the guy's like trying to close the like door to the pharmacy, and he's like, they're closing that. I said, whoa, buddy, we're not doing that right now. Like I got told that this is what's needed. Her medicine is here. It's already called in. It's filled. I need her medication. He was like still trying to close the door, saying like, we closed already. I said, no. I said, buddy, I'm letting you know right now, like the animal inside of me will find a way through this gate if I have to. Whatever your wife made for dinner will still be warm when you get there. It takes 2 seconds. Ring me up and let's go.
Sure.
Damn, you got aggressive with him.
Oh, I was ready to snap, dude.
I would've gone, like,
I'm
full-
without AA in my life for 4 years,
Yeah,
Sam.
that's
right.
Yeah.
I'm a full blown lunatic.
He's a dry drunk at this point, Sam.
I'll
You
skin
got a
that-
sword in your hand.
I'll skin that
Yeah.
man alive if I don't
Right.
live with this medicine. So he luckily he heard me out and didn't get hurt. He gives me the medication. I get home. My daughter starts this medication right away, and we start to notice differences immediately. But the thing that she's getting her medication and I'm not getting mine, so I'm getting worse. She's getting.
That's a
better.
good way to look at it.
And I spent another 18 months miserable as fuck, wanting to hurt everybody. I went through like without going too deep into the woods with it. I turned my neighbors into the enemies. I have great neighbors.
I'm sure you do.
They're phenomenal people. Every last one of them I would do anything in the world for. But I turned them all into the enemy. Like Elle and I got called on me by somebody, so I figured it had to be one of them next door to me or something like that. Like I was like losing my shit, like drastically going off the deep end, miserable as fuck. So I hated everybody, didn't trust nobody. I started to shut down. Then I find out the neighbor behind me calls the township right after I get through that instance for the bamboo that's behind me. If Mark Werner's going to get in trouble for a plant growing at a house, it ain't going to be bamboo.
Buddy,
Right,
bamboo-
exactly.
Bamboo's no joke, though. You learn about how serious
It's
bamboo
invasive,
is.
but it's to me it was just privacy behind my house. I bought the house with it. I never really looked too much into it. They made it illegal. Literally, I bought my house in 2017. They made it illegal to grow or have in 2017.
Yeah.
So like never crossed my mind to get rid of it or anything like that. It never will go anywhere just because I'm.
Oh, it's
I
still
stand
there?
on that it's not
Nice.
going nowhere.
Nice.
I fought the township like
That's awesome.
The township got screwed because I wasn't in AA, and I won because I wasn't in AA at the time because I handled things way more aggressive than what I would now.
Yeah.
But it needed to be done, I guess. But in that process, I found out the reason I'm getting called for that is because the guy behind me, who's known as Crazy Bob, who's known as Crazy Bob because he's creepy with kids, and I now have 2 kids.
Oh, no way.
That he's the one who wants to bamboozle, and I'm like, that's my privacy. So before knowing that somebody behind me is known as Crazy Bob, who's creepy with kids, I wanted that for privacy. Now I definitely want it.
You
for
have
privacy.
to have it for privacy.
So I went off the deep end there. I somehow I turned him into like Epstein.
Oh my God.
Wanted to like go knock on his door and like beat the shit out of him in the middle of the night. I go through that whole thing, and then my grandmother in August was she went in for a simple surgery for an aneurysm, and they didn't wrap the aneurysm; they wrapped their kidneys.
Oh my God.
Shut her whole organs down, ended up passing away, and
I remember,
yeah, I went into like the darkest state of depression I've
How
had
long ago was
since-
that?
This was in August.
Oh, just this past August.
This past August,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ah.
You're about to hear the quickest like bounce back story.
How about that?
Thanks to AA. But I go through the deepest, darkest depression in August, and my anger and aggression at that point had been months of raising and going through the roof. My family starts to realize it. My grandmother passes away, and then my wife's father passed away shortly after, and she had just found the guy who came into her life not long before that. And regardless of what I thought of the man, she lost her father.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I had lost my grandmother 5 days before that. I'm selfish, self-centered, and not looking at the fact that she lost her father. Nobody's going through it worse than me, and we get into a little bit of an argument. Now, I haven't said it before, but my wife on this podcast, but my wife is the greatest individual I know ever.
Yeah.
Second to none. I struck gold. Would do anything in the world to make sure that's my person until the day I take my last breath.
That's what I always say.
And thank God that we barely ever fight, but when we fought then, it was bad because it was at the height of like this explosion of like my grandmother passing away, all the township stuff, our kids, like you got to figure all these things. I didn't get to work through my daughter's health issues. I didn't get to work through being the father of 2 kids. I didn't get to work through losing the job because my meeting slowed down immediately after all of that. So I have a lot of built up aggression going on, and I punched a wall in our bedroom. And to me, is that the worst thing I've ever done? Absolutely fucking not.
That's light.
But to my saint of a wife, it was the scariest thing she's ever seen because she got to see somebody she thought would never scare her in her life.
Yeah.
Make her feel like fear. She
Not
has 2
safe,
kids in the
yeah.
room, not safe. I've never shown aggression. She's never seen that side of me, and she got to see it. And immediately the guilt and shame kicked in. The like, what the fuck did I just do? And she's like, you gotta go. I was like, what do you mean I gotta go? And she's like, you can't. We're not going to do this in front of the kids. You're not going to be punching walls and screaming at me. And like, she's absolutely right. I should not have been doing that in front of my kids in the first place.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a reality that I was going to be moved out of that house that night. And she didn't kick me out completely, but I left the house.
You couldn't sleep there that night, though.
I left there and I drove to Wildwood. It's my safe place.
Wildwood.
I don't know why.
Why?
Who's
Growing
got a
up
house
every
in
summer,
Wildwood?
I got you.
growing up every summer, that's where
Yeah.
we would go. Like my other grandmom who passed away in early recovery, her house was the one we would go to on the shore and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I kind of like, it was almost like a peace of mind type thing, like a safe place. So I drove all the way to Wildwood, and my brother works at Keenan's down there, the biggest bar in Wildwood.
Yeah.
He's a
Oh, yeah.
bartender, and I remember reaching out to him and just saying, like, I'm on my way down there. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm fine. I'm not gonna pick up. I'm not gonna hurt anybody. I'm gonna try not to hurt anybody. But I'm on my way down there, and he's like, well, when you get here, let me know. I'll step out and come meet you. And he knew not to meet me at the bar.
Yeah,
Not because I
inside.
would like
Right.
drink in there, but probably because I would start a fight and have the entire security team on me. the entire time.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'll meet you. So he met me at his house, and we stayed up talking all night. And then it clicked. Like, I don't want my kids to wake up and me not be in the house. I calmed down. So my wife at that point was scared to death because she didn't realize, like, when she told me to leave, I was going to drive all the way to Wildwood. So like the entire ride to Wildwood, she was trying to get me to come home, and I wasn't going to do it because I was afraid of what I would do if I did go home. So I stay at my brother's house that night. We talked all night, and I leave to go home because I didn't want them to wake up without me. So at that point, I had not slept. I go all the way home.
Drive home at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, got there right before they all wake up, and I told my wife, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out. Like something's got to change, and she's like, go to a meeting.
There you go. The magic words.
I'm like, I don't want to hear that shit right now.
Yeah, I know.
So
Too bad.
I ignored it.
Did you?
I ignored it.
Wow.
And I kept it pushing for like another day or two. And
She's not one of us, right?
nah, she's a normie.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, either is mine.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Neither is mine.
I always say you can only have one nut in the house.
Yeah, I'm crazy
So-
enough for the both of
Yeah.
us. So 2 days of miserableness again. Still just sitting in my own shit. I went back to like, I know there's a way to not feel this way, but I feel like I deserve to feel this way. So I sat through that for 2 more days.
Yeah, you want to beat yourself up for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it feels like anyway.
I forced myself to go to work. I forced myself to be around other people. And called my mom on my way home again. Mama's boy.
Of course.
I was just like, she was like, I haven't heard this anger out of you since prior to getting sober. Is everything okay? I was just like, damn. Well, now that you say that, no.
Right. You just pointed something out.
And she was like, what are you going to do about it? Like, why don't you call, when was the last time you talked to Mikey Stew? Mikey Stew was my counselor when I was in Florida. And
Okay.
it's this old Miami Vice looking guy with like the hamburger meat hanging out.
Love it.
the
Yeah.
mustache.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fucking, the reason he had such an impact on my life was we had a family group when I was in treatment down in Florida, and like my family, like I said, they worked their ass off, but they couldn't afford to like come down to Florida for a family group for treatment. So I'm sitting in that family group back then thinking like, there's no way I'm going to get called on. I'm going to get a free day. And for some reason, that was the day he picked to like poke the bear and try to like bring out my anger issues. And I lost, and I gripped the guy up in the front of the room.
Wow.
But from that moment forward, he figured out how to work with me through my anger and like show me that like even without drugs, like this is a problem, that's a problem. Here's your character defects, and like started to point some shit out to me, and played a huge role in my life. And she asked when was the last time I spoke to him, and I was like, it's been a while. And she was like, well, why don't you call him? And I was like, fuck, he's going to tell me to go to a meeting. I call Mikey Stew. What's up, motherfucker?
Yeah.
I'm like, nothing much, Mikey. I'm going through it. And I explained everything I'm going through and this, that, and the other. He's like, you've told me everything about all this stuff going on around you, but you haven't told me about you. And that's when it hit like, I'm not focusing on me. I'm focusing on all the shit around me and not focusing on me. And he's like, well, if the world looks like shit, it's probably because your head's jammed up your ass.
Yep.
And all you could see is the shit that's going on around you. And I was like, yeah, Mikey, I don't want to pull
No
it out yet,
gratitude
though.
whatsoever.
None. I'm not grateful for nothing. And he told me, he's like, go to a meeting. So I go home and I sit in my backyard. And again, I try to like plan, like, how do I push off this meeting thing for a little bit longer? And I sit back there and I decided I'd call a buddy of mine, John, and Johnny Mulvena.
Of course.
I called Johnny and I said, Johnny, that men's meeting we used to go to, like, is it still going on? You still go to it? He's like, it's tonight, actually.
Oh,
I'm like, fuck! Now I'm going to a meeting tonight.
Now you are.
good for you.
So
Did you
I
get
go
your
to the
hand
men's
up?
meeting that night and I raise my hand.
Oh,
and
man.
I tell them where I'm at with things, and I've been going to that men's meeting since August.
Good
And
for you.
The group of men I've surrounded myself with.
Isn't it so relieving just to understand that the root of all your problems today still gets handled the same way it did like 10 years ago?
Same exact way.
And you were the stubborn motherfucker that thought it was more complicated than that.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get in, like, whenever I get in, I smile. I'm like, God, you're such an idiot, dude.
Yep.
Like, you're such a piece of shit. Thinking that this was always your solution.
Yeah.
Everything you ever needed was right here. And you, for some reason, forgot that again. You know? It's amazing, dude.
And again,
It's so funny.
It's a simple
I
program.
think it's so funny.
how close to a drink I allowed myself to get is what scares me the most.
Yeah, sure.
So funny.
Because it's like, it wasn't necessarily like I thought about alcohol throughout that time. It wasn't like I thought about getting high, but I thought about hurting people. And if I hurt somebody, I go to jail.
Yeah, you're done.
Or I get kicked out of my house because my wife won't allow that to happen at a house. So then what happens to me then? Now that, like, if you strip away the family from me And if you strip away the home and you strip away the freedom, what do I have left? I'm going to pick the fuck up. I'm going to run. And luckily, I didn't allow myself to get to that point. I found the rooms again. I got back in there. So in August, I stepped back into the rooms and I got my hand up and I started to go to that men's meeting every Wednesday. And these group of guys, and it's a bunch of older guys, and they all roped me right in with them. Didn't make me feel out of place. Didn't like none of it. Made me feel as welcome as what I felt like AA really is. And they go to these meetings every Friday. So now I get to the point where it's like, all right, I'm adding these meetings in, and they're all close to my house this time. I'm not traveling for them. It's not a chore for me to go to them.
Your life allows for it.
Yeah,
because it's what you need.
And it's exactly what I need.
Yeah, dude.
So every other Friday, I go with them on their Friday meetings where they go to a traveling meeting, that they go to a lunch or a dinner before or after the meeting, and I go every other Friday with them for that because again, I told them like I can't do this every Friday where it's like 4 hours out of my Friday or but I could afford to do that every other Friday. So me and my wife have talked about it. It's like every other Friday I do that meeting. Then I hit a meeting throughout the week in between those two meetings.
Nice.
And that's what my meeting attendance
It's good for you.
It's been exactly
No,
what I needed.
it's right where you need.
Yep. And I got back in service, so now I'm like 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, I'm chairing that meeting, and I have a friend of mine from South Philly who's going to come out and speak for me.
Cool.
And,
Dude, the same thing happened to me. We talked about this. I remember. We talked about this because I was going through something similar over the summer as well, like in my marriage and my life. And just, I found a meeting. I go to that meeting, and then sure as shit up, me and Vinny went up to Hoboken, New Jersey. I got asked to
That was
speak.
on my anniversary, my
on his
38th anniversary.
He asked me to speak. Dude, I thought that meeting was going to be like, what was it? I thought it was going to be like 25, maybe 30 guys. Bro.
There
no
was
kidding.
probably 50 people there at least.
What, dude? There was like
Probably
almost
100.
100.
You think?
It
Yeah,
went
yeah,
all
you're
the way
yeah,
back.
you're right.
Dude,
It was 100
similar
plus.
situation.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
in the middle of a city that I don't even. I'm in Hoboken, New Jersey, dude, and we're in like this thin church, and it goes back. Dude.
Yeah.
And
It's-
this guy goes,
Yeah.
here you go. He just boom hits me in the chest with a microphone. I'm like, God, I haven't done this in a while. All right, here goes nothing.
Yeah.
And it's the best. Dude.
It was.
dude.
I enjoyed that meeting.
It was the best.
2-hour ride, and we had to charge your friggin'
You had to charge my Tesla, dude.
your Tesla.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was
Other
great.
than that, we almost ran out of juice on the way back. Yeah.
We were good
Good
though.
analogy.
Yeah.
That was identical because the girl who was on the recovery boat who asked me to speak for was at a church, massive meeting. It was their Thanksgiving or Christmas meeting.
Yeah.
And it's got a flyer for it. So when I asked her, like, where's the meeting? I got a couple of people who said they would travel out there and, like, see me and whatnot, and they would come to the meeting. So I asked her where the meeting is, and she sent me the flyer, and I'm like, oh, shit, this is a flyer.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't get too
Oh,
intimidated.
there's going to be 400 people
She's like,
there,
it's not going
right?
to be that crazy. And I'm like,
There's a flyer.
no, there's a flyer. Like,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
a professional
Right,
flyer. Like,
right.
This is gonna be
Your
a big
name's
meeting.
on the flyer too. Yeah.
So I
Mark
walk
W
in.
from Warminster. Yeah.
I walk in and it's like you got all these tables set up for people to eat at, and I'm like, "This is where I'm speaking at." No, a bigger room right next door.
That's
It's
just
a
where
church.
you're eating. Right.
Every pew was pretty much full.
Yeah,
it
dude.
was a massive meeting, and I'm like,
That's
Did
cool.
you stand? Did you stand?
"No." I sat in this chair up front, and like my heart was racing all the time. If I stood, I'd probably fall
Did you use
over.
was there a microphone?
No, but I
wow.
projected the voice pretty
Yeah, I'm
good.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure you did.
That's
but
cool.
I'm like in there. I'm like, this is wild. Like this is where I'm at, and like,
Buddy, that's where you were supposed to be.
But I told him, I said, you're not getting the story of like everything's been hunky dory for the last
No.
11 years. I was like, we're going to skip through most of this really quickly and
Tell
get
you
right
what
to
it looks
like,
Yeah, well,
where
that's
my
why.
son was born and when shit really started to go wrong in
Oh, no,
recovery.
yeah.
Well, that's where they want you to be. That's
what
where
I
they want you
wanna
to
hear about too.
Yeah, you want to hear that.
Yeah. And what's wild is every speaker at the meetings since I've come back has had like a similar type story.
Of course.
So like there was one dude, the first meeting I step into that John told me to go to with him. His story was is at 14 years he went out and picked up.
Oh wow.
I'm at 11. I'm like, dude, this is like eerily close to what's going on here.
Oh,
The
yeah.
next meeting, guy goes in. I put together X amount of time and I went back out again and went over. So it was like one thing after another where like the meetings started to line up and like God was showing himself every step of the way.
Wow.
I'll tell you, I've heard of so many people relapsing after 5 years, 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
And you just don't, I just don't get it. I've been blessed with long-term sobriety, but I mean, you do see it a lot.
Oh, you see it all the
I
time.
mean, all the time. You know what I mean? And it's sad that they think they could wander into a bar and have a drink and leave. And maybe you can do that once, That's
funny.
about it, though.
And I'll listen before we like wrap things up with you, Mark. I'll say this: like, there are a million times throughout my sobriety where I was at a point where I should have probably picked up and I didn't, and there's a reason for that.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But the way that I was acting at those times, I might as well have. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
You were living that dry drunk syndrome.
100%.
And
And it's like we were talking about before. Like, I'm just as good as invested as I am in this thing.
I was more ashamed that I acted that way without a drink or a drug. in
For
my
sure.
system.
It's almost like you should have just gone up and got the
white chip. Yeah, because there was
dude.
no
Might as
excuse
well.
for the behavior as
Yeah.
a sober man to act that way. And again, punching a hole in the wall, is it the worst thing in the world? No. But is it the worst thing that I ever did inside of my marriage? Yes, and that's a problem.
Without
Yeah.
a doubt.
So like, to wrap it up real quick with these, my life today is second to none. My life is the tits. I live a life that is beyond blessed. The two beautiful children I have, again, she got put on the medication at 5 days out of the hospital. Everything has been smooth. She has had zero issues. The girl's
Great.
sassy as can be, but I love her.
That's great.
My kids are my everything, and my wife is my everything. I do every move I make involves them one way or another. The thought process never is what is for me; it's what is for us.
Yeah.
And that's the way I live my life today. Is whatever's going to be in the best interest of us as a family and how we're going to move forward. So
I love your story, man.
That's a great story.
Thank you so much for coming out, dude.
doubt, man.
This
Thank
was
you guys for having me.
unbelievable. This is a great podcast. I love
Definitely.
talking to somebody who like gets down into the nitty gritty, like reality of what recovery looks like long term. So with that being said, brother, you want to take us out?
Sure. This is Vinny. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
I'm Sam, alcoholic and an addict.
I'm Mark, an alcoholic and an addict.
My man. And you're listening to Tenacious Recovery. I want to thank Mark. What a great story. And as usual, God willing, we'll see you next time.